Welcome back to the Better SMB podcast. I'm David Alterner, and while my co-host Rob Bull is taking a well-earned break after a couple of years of driving continuous improvement with his clients, I'm here to keep the conversation going. In this episode, I'm bringing you insights from a recent event where I had the privilege of speaking, the Mahi Tahi Collective 2025 TechFest. The event was all about collaboration, bringing together tech companies that share a vision of helping businesses to drive innovation with the right technology to boost operational performance and ultimately productivity. Member businesses included Optimation Group, Silicon Systems, Montage, Team Cloud, Xtracta, Zen Consulting, and SmartSpace. My talk dives into why productivity is such a critical issue and why it's been a long-standing challenge for New Zealand businesses. I'll discuss why GDP isn't the best measure for business owners and operators, introduce my BHAG or Big Hairy Audacious Goal of getting 100,000 businesses to start taking action on improving their performance, and outline how my research led me to develop an approach that any business can adopt, starting as soon as tomorrow. For those of you who aren't driving, this is our first video episode, where you can also see the slides I was presenting. If you're a business owner looking for clarity on how to improve performance, or just curious about productivity and how that can become a game changer, this episode is for you. Let's get started. Who's aware that New Zealand's productivity sucks? It's sucked for a long time, since the 1970s, and it's not getting any better. Don't get me wrong, businesses are getting it right, but they're the minority. And you are possibly part of that minority if you're thinking about this topic and how to innovate. I want to create a turning point for New Zealand on this subject. My guesstimate is 100,000 businesses need to begin taking action, and I'm hoping many of you can help support this. I'm David Alterner. I've worked in the technology industry for a while. From doing data cabling and programming PABXs in the 90s to head of growth and partnerships at SmartSpace.ai, an NZ startup in the generative AI space. I've worked for national and global brands in roles like high-level tech support, project management, pre-sales, sales, and enterprise account management. Now I'm in go-to-market. Over the years, I've consistently seen issues with business leaders unable to get projects over the line, even though they make sense. They'll improve efficiency and effectiveness of operations, and in many cases, produce more revenue and profit. That underpins improved business performance. It's been a frustration for me and for colleagues I've worked with that has spanned clients, regions, and decades. This was a key reason for me taking a macro subject like productivity and researching it as a part of my MBA to produce something actionable for a business owner or leader. Off the back of that, I've started a podcast with a colleague and friend, Rob Bull, called the Better SMB, where we aim to support small and medium business owners to drive operational excellence and business improvement. I'm also a founding member of the Mahi Tahi Collective and innovation ecosystem. What's so great about productivity? Our media and politicians have been talking about it for ages. Did you know our government has 9 targets spanning outcomes like improved national health measures, reduced offending and violent crime, less people using job seeker benefits, less people in emergency housing, increased student attendance and higher achievement rates, lower greenhouse gas emissions. A singular focus on productivity can impact all of these targets and more. If we're more productive, we pay more tax. Now, I'm pretty sure that could help with a lot of things, including the much needed infrastructure deficit we keep hearing about. Ultimately, improving productivity improves our future. My objective by the end of this presentation is for you to be thinking, what would happen if this was my focus inside our business for the next financial year? To solve this challenge, we need to be clear on what productivity is. When I researched it, I totally underestimated that it's a big topic, a macro term, usually used to talk about an economy or for national level comparisons. Really, the concept of productivity is simple, but it hasn't been easy for us to improve it here in New Zealand. But we're confused about its true meaning. Productivity doesn't get improved if you work from the office, home, or even hybrid. It's not really impacted by being able to drive faster. And no software product will single-handedly impact it either. It comes down to how good we are at taking our inputs and maximizing the outputs from them in our individual businesses and at an aggregate country level. At a business level, think of it like a yield metric. And it's a simple equation. Are you ready for some maths? Easy, right? Well, apparently it's not easy. Because where do we typically focus? Where do our business leaders and government been focused most recently? That's right, on the input side. But like any fraction, the bottom can be reduced only so much. We can only cut costs to a certain level, and they'll never make it to zero. The top metric of the equation is where we get a multiplying or scaling effect if we can increase it. And this is the area we need to focus most. So how bad is New Zealand's productivity? It's pretty bad. There are lots of different graphs you can look at. They all show the same thing, that we're falling behind our peers. Collectively, we're not doing well with this subject. We measure productivity using a metric called gross domestic product on either a per capita or per hour worked measure. GDP is useful at a government level for politicians, advisors, and economists, but not so great at a business level and impossible to impact for an individual business. Even though other nations' productivity is tapering off at the moment, we're certainly not looking like we're catching anyone soon. In fact, the only real way we've been able to increase GDP since the early 2000s has largely been driven by us working longer hours. So certainly not smarter, basically harder. Now, do you see the yellow line? Well, that yellow line is Slovakia. They've had a meteoric rise in the levels of productivity that they've had, and their claim to fame and contributor to that amazing achievement is that they've got the highest car production capacity per capita for brands like VW, Kia, Jaguar Land Rover. In fact, they're producing 1 million cars and only have a 5.4 million population. Sounds a little bit like the size of New Zealand. You know, I really wonder what New Zealand's thing could be. Have a think about this. Productivity is our biggest economic challenge. It's not one of the top 10 or 20. It's number 1. Did you know that? So what are we doing about it? Whatever we've been doing, it clearly hasn't worked. Generations are measured in 20 to 30 year periods, and they're using a plural. This was the basis for my research on the subject. There's a lot of talk in the media and by politicians. We hear macro level discussions about how we increase GDP, grow our exports through free trade agreements and attract foreign direct investment. But none of it's really working. None of it's producing an impact. And if we're not productive, perhaps our businesses aren't worth investing in. All of these terms, individual business leaders can't control. And while we wait on our government, not many businesses are taking action. I wanted to offer a way New Zealand businesses and business leaders could take ownership of this metric and start taking action. individually if required, and support them to build businesses that are assets. The boiling frog, caged bird, or elephant and the rope are all great examples or analogies for our productivity situation. We've been tied to this problem for so long, it just feels normal. And generally speaking, we're living with it instead of happening to it. Culturally, we have some challenges too. How tall poppies are viewed, a general lack of ambition, people getting into business simply to own their jobs, and our desire to try and do it ourselves rather than hire an expert. We end up working harder, not smarter. We're not seeing progress, something that's continually reported on by the media and research organizations. And I believe we're collectively losing hope that we can turn this around. Hope, it's a powerful source of inspiration. We need to believe that change is possible and see tangible progress, no matter how small. I want to reframe our number one challenge as an opportunity. I'd like to get 100,000 businesses to begin taking action. So how do we do this? My starting point was to understand what enables or constrains this metric for the 163,000 businesses that employ between 1 and 100 team members, or 51% of all employed New Zealanders. And this is what my research was based on. What were my findings? There are 7 key themes, and leadership is the core enabler and most critical. Leadership, mission, vision, core values, strategic and business planning, team building, executing on an ongoing basis, innovation, constantly looking at the business to see how services and products are delivered and asking, how can we do better? Collaboration, eliminating the DIY culture we have in New Zealand, engaging your team, partner organizations, and other third parties to explore and take action on better ways to operate your business. Access to capital. We all say it's hard to borrow money. I'd like to let you in on a little secret. Banks love to lend money, but they also want to get it back. So you need to be a good risk and be able to demonstrate that. Resource management. This is about how your business delivers products and services, gets paid, and optimally manages your resources to maximize the ROI from your business. Customer centricity. Another secret, revenue comes from customers. By building great relationships, continuing to do what they need, exceeding expectations, and delivering great outcomes, you create loyal customers who keep coming back and will send you referrals. The business environment, the thing we all can't control. Currency and interest rate fluctuations, government decisions and the political environment, COVID, the GFC, President Trump's election, and tariffs, Israel, Ukraine, the list goes on. These findings are key for business leaders to focus on to create higher performing businesses, but they needed to be simplified and turned into something actionable that could be handed to a business owner for them to begin executing on. I started grouping them together to establish commonality and then streamlined the messaging. I appreciate you all may be thinking, that's great. Here's a target state to operate my business from. But as a typical business owner, I really understand and appreciate you are more than likely juggling a huge amount of priorities and feel like your world is quite chaotic. And it's likely there's at least 100,000 other business owners and leaders feeling the same way. We can't simply snap our fingers and everything is fixed. It's going to require a level of intentional focus and a gradual approach to take action for you to begin feeling progress. So how can you get there? Step 1, leaders need a starting point, a measure of productivity for their business, and need to know how they've been tracking. Step 2, There are some fundamentals you need to have in place. If some of those are missing, they need to be established. And lastly, building a culture that supports and encourages distributed leadership, focus, innovation, collaboration, and support underpinned by data. This is our first step on the road to a higher performing business. It's time for some more maths. Now we have some work for leadership. You need to identify and apply a GDP-like metric to the business and establish a key measure for productivity. This is a starting point. Don't get too tricky. When we look at GDP, it's on a per capita and per hour basis. So how does that translate down to your business? People play a key part in businesses. And for many businesses out there, their highest cost is typically wages and salaries. So a ratio involving key revenue-related metrics could be a good starting point. Revenue, salary, profit per FTE, turning that into a ratio and then tracking that back 3 to 5 years. This is going to show you how your business has performed and give you insight into where you are starting from. I'm going to provide an example for you of an NZX listed business. But before then, take some time and get your business's numbers. You could be quite surprised to see how you compare. How do you think your business has performed? Now, this is a real life example of an NZX listed business. I've used their annual reports from 2019 to 2024 to get their revenue, salaries, profit before tax, and number of FTE metrics. See how this formula applies on an individual FTE level. Now, it's worth noting here that there's been a consistent increase in FTEs over the period, with the exception of 2023 when they came back a little bit. Now, there's a lot of numbers, and using a table format can make it hard to see the trends. So let's move to more of a graphical format. For the visual learners, we can see revenue grew during COVID. It's dropped and it's flattened out. Staff costs are growing, but slightly, but profits are in decline. Based on this information, do you think this business is doing well? How do you think your business would compare? Now, you might be thinking, we're a non-profit, government, or council, or another organization that isn't really focused on lifting profits. So while profit in its true sense may not be something that you typically focus on, the essence of it in your setting should be. Ideally, you're not losing money. After all, losses have to be funded from somewhere. Whatever you call profit is funding or contributing to your core purpose. It might be frontline health resources or public services for a council. More than likely, there is a key metric you can use. Back to our example business. I want to demonstrate the difference between using an FTE metric as opposed to totals for revenue, salaries, and profit. Now, our two charts demonstrate the differences, or that there are differences, between the per FTE and total revenue, salary, and profit metrics. We can see on the revenue metrics that while revenues have dropped since 2021, they appear to now be recovering. The other metrics are somewhat similar between the two charts though. By taking some time to consider why there are differences, this gives us a different perspective. Here are some examples. Our workforce expansion has actually diluted the business's ability to be productive. The company hired 2,700 new FTEs between 2019 and 2024. Yet, the revenue per team member peaked in 2021 and has since declined and flatlined. Profit has fallen more sharply from its peak. So the key insight we get here is that scaling headcount without maintaining individual productivity can dilute efficiency, profitability squeeze, and rising costs without equivalent productivity gains. So salaries have steadily increased, even though our per FTE profit has declined. So growing labor and the associated costs without proportional revenue and efficiency gains actually erodes your margins over time. So total revenue versus the per employee contribution could be masking a trend. While total revenue has appeared to drop and then recover, per FTE revenue has dropped and flattened. The business's revenues have grown, but it hasn't become more efficient. So looking only at total revenue can give you a false sense of progress. Per FTE metrics provide a clearer picture of your workforce's productivity. Now, let's see what the impact has been on the business's value over this period. Do you think it's gone up or down? This may surprise you. While the operational performance of the business has declined, the business has actually grown in value. There could be some nuances here because of market dynamics. Let's explore a few perspectives. A business that grew in value, but has it improved? Well, our valuation has gone from 8 billion to 20 billion. A significant rise. It suggests there's strong investor confidence and market enthusiasm for the company's future. But did the company's financial performance justify this massive increase? The financials show productivity and profitability challenges, with revenue per employee peaking in 2021 and now declining and flatlining. Profit per employee is dropping more sharply than total profit, and then salaries have increased consistently. If individual productivity declined, why did the value more than double? So what's driven the valuation increase? External factors? Maybe market trends and demand spikes may have fueled optimism. Investor sentiment may have focused on total revenue, market positioning, and future growth rather than operational efficiency. The key question, is this a case of market hype, or is there a fundamental business shift that justifies the valuation? This business is Fisher & Paykel Healthcare, a globally recognized company that's benefited from a surge in demand for their products during the pandemic. Investors focused on industry positioning and long-term growth rather than short-term financial trends may have driven the valuation for this company up. But with normalizing demand, now we're out of the COVID years, can this valuation be sustained, or will efficiency and profitability matter more? Now, no one's got a crystal ball, so it'll be interesting to complete the same analysis in 6 months or so when the latest financials are released. Remember, company value is more than just financial performance, especially for a publicly listed company. Market value can rise even when internal performance weakens. Investors may prioritize future potential over current productivity. A temporary demand surge, like the pandemic, can mask operational inefficiencies, creating a valuation bubble. Per FTE metrics reveal whether the business performance over the periods is actually improving beyond what investors might assume. Long-term valuations and sustainability depends on balancing revenue growth with workforce efficiency. This is a great segue into the next step on the path to becoming a high-performing business. Now we have our measure of business performance. It's important we spend some time planning to avoid this happening to our business. Feedback from the business leaders I interviewed for my research found there are fundamentals that successful businesses have and do. If you think about them, they become the beginning of demonstrating how your business is an asset worth investing into, and also help demonstrate why a higher business value can be justified. Perhaps that's another reason for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare's valuation. Now, while I go through these, think about your business or someone you know who operates your own business, and if they have or do these things. Do you have a compelling vision or purpose that galvanizes your team and associated core values? Have you taken the time to document a business plan that's a living document that you operate your business to? From that plan, what are the key metrics the business is run to? Do you conduct regular check-ins to see how you're performing to your plan and adjust or make course corrections as necessary? What's your financial awareness like? Can you hold your own in an in-depth discussion with a business broker, prospective investor, accountant, or banker with your profit and loss, balance sheet, and cash flow statement? The principle here is that these are all underpinning disciplines and artifacts required to build a business into an asset that's attractive for investors or lenders to support growth or for an eventual sale. Now we have these fundamentals in place. As a business owner or leadership team, you're in a position where you have a dashboard showing your performance that you're using to operate and direct your business because you have a vision that you're aligned on and striving for. Know what's important for you and the business with well-defined core values. You've taken the time to define a business plan with associated actions and accountability mapped out. And you're financially aware, comfortable talking to the professionals you engage to support you. You also have a measure for determining how your business is performing that ties to your overall business's level of productivity. These are great foundations to grow and scale the impact that your business can deliver from. With our foundations in place, it's now time to think about our people. Using those words from Steve Jobs, the worst thing any leadership team can do is be in the way of the business. By completing the first two stages, we can now enable an environment where there is distributed leadership and decision-making enabled by our core purpose and values. Our team can now create our KPIs and KRAs and deliver on them in alignment to the company's business plan and vision. Here's an example of what that could look like. Operationally, your finance team, they may see now they're looking at how they can support the business to achieve its mission and purpose. That debtor days might have blown out a little bit. Let's say they're at 90, so they introduce a new debtor day KPI where we want to bring those back to 30. So once they achieve that, we now have 2 months more cash in the business and we're able to pay our bills. Now the impact of that ripples through the business. So now our delivery team, who aren't on stop credit anymore, are able to show up on time. There's less rework and they're under less pressure. So for them, their KPI, that could become 90% first call job completion. Our customer team, now we're not apologizing all the time for being late and having to come back and do reworks and these type of things, can align our core market message. We're always on time. We complete work on the first visit and deliver high quality outcomes. The thing we're now looking to is that our customer net promoter score stays above 85, let's say, and at a sales pipeline level, which gives us confidence in our future revenues, we want to have that at 2 times our forecast revenue for the next 90 days. Innovation. Well, because we're showing up on time and we've got less rework, our team have more time to innovate and think about how to do things better. So we're going to allocate a budget to innovation and research and development and build an innovation pipeline. This could be as simple as having leadership and management begin asking, what do you need? Or what could we do differently to improve how we operate? And then taking action and delivering on some of your team's ideas. A KPI in time could be the percentage of revenue from innovations. But in the shorter term, the size of the innovation pipeline and budget may be your initial metrics. Enablement and support. This section is where the rubber hits the road from your innovation planning. And we're at war with New Zealand's DIY culture. Stop trying to shoehorn that free piece of software to half do something that takes 4 years to see a result. Engage a specialist, get it done, and start realizing the benefits and ROI immediately. In fact, work with your vendors and partners to support you in developing your business case. Projects delivered, value added, and value still to be added to the business may show up as metrics here. These have been a simple example for illustrative purposes. So now leadership are steering the ship of key metrics with their dashboard. Other parts of the business are responsible for managing how they are contributing. Each part of the business operates with appropriate levels of independence and oversight, provided there's alignment and achievement. Now we've created an environment where we support the business and our teams and individuals who are enabled to get on with their jobs, reducing bureaucracy, administrative and other unnecessary overheads. There is more work and thinking behind this. So this is a streamlined run through of my research findings, this framework, and the steps to applying it. What I've gone through has come together by researching the perspective of leaders in the B2B sector who have seen the good, bad, and ugly across their customer bases. Their knowledge led me to how the right disciplines and actions across businesses create the right types of organizational focus. If we can get that right, then injecting innovation supported by tech combined with execution, we can get ourselves on a great path to lifting organizational performance at an individual business level. By getting a groundswell of businesses moving in that direction, we can then begin to impact productivity at a national level and begin seeing the associated benefits. The stages and phases I've outlined are not complex, but do require intentionality. Your business's current state could span the stages I've outlined, but remember the important thing is to make sure you're continuing to progress. I'll give you a broader perspective. For every person who watches this presentation, there could be 1,000 businesses that aren't taking any action. And it isn't possible for the high performers to carry the load for everyone, regardless of how much tech, AI, or the latest and greatest things you adopt. It's in our collective interests to create a nation where we're looking to unlock our full potential. We've left this problem to the government for the last 30 or 40 years, and there's been no meaningful progress. By generating momentum across the business landscape and then connecting into different government initiatives, we can begin creating the meaningful change we need. If I had a time machine, the best time to talk about productivity would have been in the 90s. Given I don't, then the next best time is today. We are all living into a future that will be enabled and driven by AI. If you want to be a part of that future, you need to embrace the fact that regardless of what you do, all businesses need to become data-driven. We can spend time thinking about the should-haves and could-haves. But if you're not already on a journey to be a digital business, you need to start now because it's likely your competition already are. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. If you'd like to learn more about my research, please visit my website at altena.solutions. That's a wrap on this episode of the Better SMB. Today we explored why productivity remains a challenge for so many businesses, why traditional metrics like GDP aren't the best guide for business owners, and how 100,000 businesses taking action could transform the business landscape in New Zealand. If this episode resonated with you, here's my challenge. Think of one business owner or leader in your network who could benefit from this conversation, and please share this episode with them. Whether they're struggling with performance, looking for fresh ideas, or simply open to new ways of thinking, this could be the spark they need to start making meaningful progress. And if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, provide us with a review, and connect with Rob and me on LinkedIn.